Oh yeah, it's doing it. Okay, there we go. I think it is. It is live. It is live. There's no button. I don't see a button. It says live already. Ha yeah. We know.
I can't help but to think of the what is it, the Hannity thing? Or no, it's the Bill
Bill
O'Reilly thing.
O'Reilly.
We'll do it
Yeah.
live. We'll do it
Yeah.
live. Yeah, exactly. You,
Do we reset this or are we gonna go live right now?
it's already happening.
All right, let's go ahead and talk about it then. All right, well, welcome to our fun-filled episode. If you can't tell, we are technical geniuses at that. Uh, we are going to go over a few fights. It's been a while since we last caught up, guys. So we have a number of cards to go over. You have UFC 290. Obviously, that was headlined with Volk versus Yair. Strickland versus Magomed. Not Magomedov, excuse me, not Magomed. Um, and then actually, it is Magomed, Ankalaev. Topuria versus Emmett. And then we have this
Uh-oh.
weekend's card, which is going to just kick ass with Holm versus Silva. That said, I'm joined with my constituents, as you know, with Turnit and Roll. Let's go ahead and talk about that crazy card that we all experienced last week. UFC 290. What are your thoughts?
Oh my. I mean, it was a roller coaster. I mean, if I just go through it, like hot round here, right? Maybe we need to wait for roll. I think roll just dropped by accident.
Mhm.
In the meantime, let me get a sweet pick of
Sweet pick of
Jan Blachowicz. Dude, did you see the Jamal Hill news?
Yeah, he ruptured his Achilles,
He did.
and he's
Uh,
going to have I mean, relinquish his belt, and on top of which, he's going to require surgery for that.
yeah, I know. I mean, I don't know what Dana's gonna decide here,
Mhm.
but it
I,
should be
b-
interesting.
I believe he's going to go with the route of whoever wins between Jan and Alex, and between Yuri and Magomed, if I'm not mistaken.
But don't you think like there's gonna be an interim title fight?
That can very well be the case too.
I mean, I'm hoping for it because Little Turnit and I are going to 291,
Right.
so that would be insane. Like that would fulfill a bucket list for us, like a bucket list item.
Yeah.
Seeing a Jan like title fight. Oh,
I mean, two times, right? Because both of you guys were there for the initial one.
well, we were there for the Rockage fight at the Apex, which
Oh,
was yeah, which was great. It was really great. And then originally we planned to go to Columbus for his fight with Rockage for
mhm.
that, but then that got pushed. So that's how we ended up at the Apex, which
Got it.
I know a lot of people complain about that. Like they'll be like, "Oh, Apex is so quiet and stuff." But
Oh,
okay,
Apex
yeah,
is so much better.
I like it because of the
Right.
size, the size. So
Right.
it's small, close quarters, smaller octagon.
Right.
So that's a plus to me. It forces action. And then I guess from a viewership perspective, people don't like it because it seems quiet in there. But I actually think that's pretty awesome because you could hear the coaches screaming, you can hear people talking and like
Right.
making comments and stuff. And then if you're in the audience, like we had a phenomenal time. You can hear everything. It's just incredible. So I don't know. I just think it's cool.
No, I think you're right on that because back in the day when Pride FC was kicking ass and UFC was taking basically the backseat to Pride, the fights were kind of like that, where everybody was just quiet. Like the Japanese audience, you rarely hear much outside of maybe a few yelling and just not even heckling. They're just like trying to rally the crowd up. It's amazing how much of the MMA that they truly wanted to learn back in the day.
I like it. I think it's dramatic.
Right.
I'm a big fan of I can't remember if this was like the Nets or if anybody else does this, but you know how they have like the basketball court and it's lit up and then everything else around it is dark and the UFC does that in a lot of their live events where it's like the
Oh,
octagon is lit up, everything else around
right,
is dark and
right.
it's just it's like a theater, it's like a stage
Yeah, it's showmanship.
for sure.
By the way, who's that blonde standing right next to Jan, his wife?
That's his wife. Yeah.
Uh, I mean, I'd rather see her, but
I'm
sure, yeah.
sorry. I'm in the way. Jan is such a cool dude. Like I've been watching more and more of his like actual stuff, like interviews in
Right.
Polish. He's wholesome. I like him a lot.
Yeah, he comes off as a genuine guy.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, like with other athletes, had they gone with a different, more recognized and more calculated gyms, uh, would he have actually been title like? Would he been basically a champion who would have defended his belt for several years instead of like what had happened to him?
Hmm.
Like he was a
Agreed.
light heavyweight champ, but
Yeah,
I don't
that
know.
Glover fight was tough, but
Right,
if anything, I think, Glover's a monster. Like he's great.
right.
And I've become a Glover fan as a result of that. And I know we're kind of on a tangent a little bit, and I'm just I don't know. It's bittersweet to hear about the Jamal Hill news from a Jan fan perspective
Right.
because they might make it an interim fight, but if they do, that's 5 rounds, and it'll be like the second time in a row that he's been in a training camp for 3 rounds, and now he has to go five.
Right.
So
Which, I mean, he's what, 30, 43 right now, 44?
he's a little older than the
Right.
average, yeah, for sure. And like that's a big difference. A 3 round fight, like a fight camp versus five, big
Right.
difference. I think the only thing that works kind of in his favor is the fact that Alex is more of a
Oh
stand-up
no, is my
kickboxer type.
I think it's crashing again. Hold on.
Hey, Roll, what's up?
There it is. I can hear you.
Nice. I am trying
It
to.
says my connection's unstable. I'm going to move to a different room. Give me 1 second.
Yeah. No worries, man.
I like how we're doing this on the live right now, demonstrating to people our prowess, our complete hold of technology.
It's all good.
Uh,
This is annoying. I'm sorry, guys.
no, hey, it's
Don't
fine.
be.
It happens to all of us.
You know what? We can put man on the moon. We have rovers on Mars, but I can't have good Wi-Fi.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Well, yeah, a lot of other things, right? America is one of the slowest nations when it comes to adopting is it telecom.
Yeah, the infrastructure for like
Yeah,
the fiber and everything else. Yeah.
right. It's pretty shit.
Yeah. And even when they say like, oh yeah, we did it. Yeah, but then it
Fiber's
actually
awful.
turns out they can't handle the loads, unfortunately.
Right, right. We burned through our servers.
I just recently had fiber installed about 6 months ago.
Mhm.
Awful. It's made it worse. Like my connection is terrible now.
Yeah, it's probably they probably didn't do it right.
We're good. I'm closer to the. It's like 2006. I have to be close to the router. So
Hey, I struggle with the same stuff myself, honestly.
all right. Sorry, guys.
We were just like to fill some space here, Roll. We were just talking about the Jan versus Pereira fight and what Jamal Hill relinquishing the belt. Like what are the implications of that potentially? For like, do we think maybe the UFC would do an interim fight, like a title fight or something like that? And how unprecedented that would be to have the second light heavyweight like fight for an interim
Mhm.
belt again so shortly after that tie. Yuri's injured. I mean, it's just weird. It's just weird. But we don't have to focus on that. You're back.
No,
So
no, let's talk about it. I mean, we already got into it a bit, and I'd like to have Roll's opinion of the matter.
Okay, hear me out. Catchweight, John Jones, Yuri Prohaska. No, I'm just playing.
Ooh, okay.
that would be cool.
I think that would be crazy, but I don't see that ending well for Yuri. But yeah, no, I think it would be awesome. I think that was an extremely mature move. I have so much more respect for Jamal Hill now because of it.
Right.
He could have just as easily held it up like Francis did for the longest time, and I think
Yeah.
Yeah.
him giving that up is a responsible and mature way to go about it. If you have an injury like that, I mean, that's a hard thing to do. You have the belt, you've worked your whole life for the strap, and you get it. And he didn't have a fight since he won the belt, did he?
No, yeah,
Yeah. So
it's
just like Geary, basically.
this division has been like musical chairs.
Yeah.
A lot of people talk crap about it online about how light heavyweight is not exciting. I think this is exciting. It to me it's interesting to see like all of these different changes and different matchups and stuff. But to each their own. I think there's nothing boring about having these kind of scenarios happen. It's drama. It's drama.
Drama is the best way to sum it up. I mean, it's a hell of a lot better than I think the women's strawweight division back in the day, right? Okay, the reason why I bring that up is that Roll, I don't know if you recognize the name Nico Montana, is it? Montano? She was the first strawweight champ out
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
Ultimate Fighter, and then she didn't do anything but came in overweight for both of her title defenses,
Yep.
right? And she even had to like cancel a bout or two. And the reason why I bring that up is like we don't want to have another episode like her or Francis, like where they just hold on to their belts and then nothing gets done, right?
Agreed.
You have these weird interim sort of fights.
I
But
actually
Yeah.
pulled her out of 50 from striking signatures. Unfortunately, I went to an LCS and they had boxes and I bought one and she was the card, unfortunately. So
well, I mean, there are worse cards. So
there
I
are
mean,
worse, yeah.
There are worse cards. Always, there's always worse cards.
it's always a worse card.
Yeah, always. And there's always better cards, but there's always worse cards.
But speaking about better, if not epic cards, UFC 290. Let's go through it, right? I mean,
Let's go back. Let's go back. Yeah.
Let's go back in time.
And
All
I was
right.
gonna do kind of like a lightning round, just my
Yeah.
thoughts on some of this. So I thought, I mean, the Robbie Lawler send off, his swan song, almost felt scripted because of how perfect it was.
Yes.
So I was happy to see that. That was a feel good moment. And the fact they had like the video teed up and everything, that was great.
Mhm.
Dana made a joke. He's like, I'm glad we had that video because that fight was so fast. So I mean, we don't have to talk about it too much because there's not much to talk about. Like Robbie just that is like the perfect end note to a long
Yeah.
career.
Right.
Good for him. Awesome stuff. So of course we had to mention that. Bo Nickel. So I am like, I know there's a lot of hype around Bo Nickel, and a lot of the commentary was just like, oh, we knew he was a wrestler, but obviously he's a striker. I didn't interpret that fight that way, and maybe that's just me and I'm ignorant. I don't know. But it looked to me, and this is not surprising because the person that he was fighting was just a fill-in randomly last minute who's not even in the UFC, right?
Well, he was, and I'm sorry, he wasn't from the UFC, but they
He
got
wasn't, yeah.
another league, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like they just signed him on short notice. The guy
Right.
comes in, he's getting a shot to the UFC. A lot of people get their starts like this. It's like short notice, etc.
Right.
He can't box, period. Like, did you watch that? Like
Yes.
he couldn't box at all. I am not impressed by somebody who knows how to box, boxing against someone who doesn't know how to box. So I didn't learn anything about Bo Nickel here. Okay, some people will say like, oh, he has power and stuff. It's like, yeah, but this guy didn't defend himself at all, like at all.
That's a valid point.
And I thought it was just embarrassing actually for the promotion to be scheduling fights like this. You could have found someone better on short notice. There's a lot of hungry dogs out there that would have jumped in, but I think they knew exactly what they were doing. So I'm not taking anything away from Bo Nickel, but I just didn't learn anything from this. And by the way, but I do respect him. He's a stand-up dude because he just had a kid and he said he's going to step away a little bit. He doesn't care if the hype dies down a little bit. I can't remember if he had a son or daughter, but he's going to be away for a little while to just see them kind of grow up a little bit for at least a few months, a year. So hats off to him. Congrats, Bo. I just don't think this changed literally anything, even though it's like it reminds me kind of boxing. Like when they pad records of fighters of boxing, this is what it reminded me of.
Well, yeah,
I want to pause there because you guys probably have some comments around that one.
Well, actually, to go back with Robbie Lawler, I mean, that thing was just beautiful, the way he ended the fight, because that is who Ruthless always been. He hasn't been one to play it safe. he's been one to not only like bring it, but also make a show out of it. If you look back into his title defenses, that guy was just an absolute monster. He wanted to end fights as the champion, which is unheard of. Even GSP, one of the GOATs, right? He wanted to play it safe. Whereas Robbie, even though he did lose his belt because that's that comes at a cost to fight like that, he made it so much fun, right, for us all included. And I think he ended it perfectly with this, like, what's that, couple of left hands, right? But to see him also, this stoic character that we know of from the Midwest, right? He manifests all those values, but he even broke down, which was kind of like not Robbie at all, and that took it to another
Yeah.
level.
100%. Like I like to see that emotion. Um, it's just so real, and you can't help but have it impact you when you're watching that.
Right.
And I saw some comments online. They were like, "Oh, why is he crying? Like, what's the big deal?" Okay, like imagine your career and your passion and something that you love. And for a lot of people, it's something that helped them, out of a tough situation. Maybe they didn't have anything else to go on. We've talked about like the mental health benefits of joining a good gym with good people and all that kind of stuff. And this is like, you can't fight forever. You can't play basketball forever. You can't play any sport forever.
Right.
And this is like the end of that journey.
Right.
And that's all you've known for most of your life. Anybody that doesn't understand that or respect it, like you're not a fan. You're not a fan.
Oh, Roll, what are your thoughts? Oh, can't hear you.
Sorry, guys.
That's all good,
Don't be
man.
sorry, man. Oh, it's installing drivers.
You hear me?
Yeah, we
Yeah,
can
we
hear
can
you.
hear you.
Okay. Sorry, I forgot I had the microphone to do at my disposal.
Hey, don't worry about it, man.
No, I couldn't agree more, Jiho. That was the most pure thing I think I've seen in the octagon. I mean, the way he broke down like that, you're right. He is one of the most stoic characters in the UFC, and to go out like that, I mean, he lived by the sword and died by the sword. He is an absolute maniac. I love Robbie Lawler. I mean, and he went out. That was the best possible scenario. I mean,
Yes.
I wanted to see him win. He quit at the exact right time. To go out like that against a guy like Nico Price too, who's not a slouch. Nico Price has won against some big names. Was it Cowboy Oliveira?
Yeah.
Won against a couple real good fighters. He went. I think he went to decision with. Oh no, he almost went to decision with Horo. I don't remember how that ended.
But also, like, he pulls stuff out of his ass. Do you like that up kick?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's a scrapper.
For Robbie to wrap it up in the first round, so quick, and it was incredible. I really can't even I can't formulate the words for this. It's so pure and so amazing, and I loved
The
it.
accuracy, of like all of his strikes connected pretty much. Like,
and you
put it crazy.
You put it well, Turnit. I think with you put all that energy into your career, and I mean the guy did so much for the sport and so much for the exposure of the sport. Fought for all these guys to have, what they have now. It could have easily turned into a, backyard bare knuckle. It could have fallen apart. It could have not been televised, and he was one of the guys that brought the hate, and we all love him for it. So, yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think he went out the way he should have gone out to be such a legend and go out, with such a great victory. I loved it.
Yeah, it's always good. It's always good to see that, as opposed to like the Frankie Edgar exit. And God bless him, but that was rough to watch, and I was sad about it. You don't want that. Sorry, go ahead, Gio.
No, it's all good. So, and if you want even more of a reason why you should be a fan of Robbie Lawler, looking back into his past performances, watch his post-fight interview with Nick Diaz in their second fight together, and it's as though like someone's like dicing up onions right next to you, because Robbie asks Nick, "Hey, how are you?" Like, and then Nick responds, "I'm doing good." But then Robbie's actually asking him, like, "Hey, how are you doing overall?" Because this fight game, you don't have a 401k. You don't have the luxuries that many of us do. So if you can't, if you're not a fan already of Robbie, just watch that clip, and it just speaks, well, a great deal of the gentleman that he is, both in and out of the cage, while still being like a crazy berserker.
And that's pretty much exactly what I was trying to say. Is he kind of brought attention to that kind of thing?
Right.
I mean, he was one of the pioneers, and look where they are now. I mean, look at Josh Emmett and some other guys that are petitioning for fighter pensions.
Yes. I mean, he fought since he was 19 years old, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that just seems like such a freaking no-brainer to me.
Yeah.
And it, like, I get that, like, you don't want to open the can of worms because there's a crap ton of fighters, especially with like an expanded roster with ESPN deal going down. You have a higher volume of fights, but no one's telling you that you have to give people pensions and like all these benefits and stuff.
Right.
If someone's only doing like 3-4 fights, it's like, look, if you get, maybe you do it, and I think this could be good, is like, look, if you're on and you do at least 3 to 5, like 5 fights in the UFC, you qualify. Done.
Right.
And that's not unreasonable. I don't think anybody would like scoff at that, right? It just seems crazy to me that like there's still a debate about this. But you know, that's something that like we're just part of the choir here, right? Like we're preaching to the choir. Everybody's saying this, so I think it's only a matter of time. I just don't know when that's actually going to materialize.
Yeah, that's actually a good topic actually to bring up with perhaps like other fighter fans that Roland and I both know, and not just talk about the fighting aspect, but also like how their lifestyle is affected from something joining like this. All right, so that said, let's move on to the next fight. I mean, it only gets better from here. Hooker versus Turner.
Did you guys? Well, Jiho, sorry, sorry to interject. Did you guys have any comments on Bo Nickel? So I know I floated some opinions, but I just wanted to make sure I didn't like leave you guys out, because I would love to know what you guys thought about that.
You want to go first, Roll?
Sure. Yeah. So Val Woodburn, I did some research on him before the fight, and I kind of saw it going exactly this way. He's a big monster of a fella, but I don't think he was going to be doing very well in the boxing department. I watched his last fights, and nothing against him because I don't want to talk badly about anybody that's willing to step in there and do what they do. But I just didn't think that he was Bo Nickel caliber. You know, and that unfortunately that is the rite of passage for a lot of guys that are trying to get into the UFC, is to fight the star. Because they, like you said, they are going to pad their records a little bit, and that's just the way it's going to be.
Yeah, it's going to be like that. Yeah, but I mean like he didn't even have his hands up the right way for some of those exchanges. Like I don't know. It just it didn't look good to me.
Right. And I think it's
not Bo. It's just the organization. I'm just like, really, guys, come on.
And there's an added element of them being nervous and shaking off those nerves, because when you step into that cage, I'm sure it's got to be exhilarating, but at the same time, like you want to shit yourself at the it's hard. It's hard to deal with that when you're not used to that stardom.
Yeah, and it's massive pay-per-view. I mean, Jesus.
Yeah, an incredible pay-per-view, one of the best of the year, and you're on it, and you're stepping in there 7-0 as a pro, and it's like you don't have that experience to be like, okay, I'm on this main stage, and look at Bo. He's been competing his entire life in wrestling, and he's been on the biggest stage that there is. I mean, he's had the whole world watch him, not just the country. So
hats off to that guy for accepting that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I just didn't see it going his way, but unfortunately, that's kind of the way it goes. Like I said, it's the rite of passage for most of these guys.
Yeah, we're not taking anything away from the guy. It's just I just felt like for the promotion, like maybe 2 fights ago, this would have made sense for Bo. I just think like after his last fight, the way it went and everything, like I would have preferred to have seen a step up, not just a random. Unfortunately, like Jiho, what do you think?
No comment. I mean, we knew what was going to happen. That was it.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right. So back to what you were saying, Hooker versus Turner.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Where Hooker, he dyed his hair with peroxide and then intentionally to make it red due to the fight. Yeah. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
So I was watching this live with some of my friends, and Jalen looked pretty damn good, not gonna
Yes.
lie. I mean, Jalen's great. Turner's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
But a lot of my friends were like, "Oh, Turner's taking a lot of damage." And I was just
Yeah.
like, Turner doesn't, or excuse me, Hooker doesn't get knocked out.
No,
Like
he doesn't.
he's not this is not going to end the fight for Hooker. Um, it might actually embolden him a little bit. And like Hooker he reminds me a little bit like just again, we talked about like Glover and stuff. There's fighters out there that take damage and then they'll smile back at you. And that's kind of what Hooker does is he like waits for his shots. Now, is that good for his long-term health? No. But that's his fighting style. He takes damage and then he gives it back, and that's exactly what happened. I actually thought by the end of it that Turner was going to be finished many times.
Right.
There was nothing behind his eyes. Like when you looked at his stare, like I'm actually pretty confident that he was concussed towards the end. And like maybe you should end fights if you can tell that a fighter's concussed, but like I saw his eyes kind of rolling back a little bit. Um, I'm not a doctor. I'm not an expert. I'm not a ref, but that was my interpretation. It just looked really bad. But holy shit, Turner is an absolute monster for surviving that and for being able to finish the fight.
Right.
Like, and Dan, like we found out later because like we were screaming, why is he not finishing him? Oh, it turns out he broke his wrist, right? Or his arm or whatever.
He broke his arm.
Makes
His
perfect
arm
sense.
and I think he broke his skull too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, oh yeah.
He
He
broke
had a
his
little part,
orbital.
yeah.
Right.
He had a little fracture. And then, now it makes perfect sense because like why isn't he finishing him? He had him in an exact position to finish him. It all makes sense. Both of these guys came out of that to me looking like absolute monsters and legends.
Well, I mean, this was a fight in which it was more for Hooker to gain than for Turner because Hooker, for a while, I mean, he lost 4 out of 5 fights. I mean, he went against Islam, lost against him. He went against Chandler, lost by a brutal TKO by him. So I believe right now the UFC is trying to pad his record up, like not bring him the easiest of fights because prior to Turner, there was what's his name, Claudio
Puelles, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And that guy, I mean, he was a one-trick pony, right? He just kept on trying to do the Imanari rolls. He tried to like engage with him through jiu-jitsu. But Turner was like the true test, right? Because Turner, that guy is a beast. I mean, he'll step up, but we also saw gaps in his game as well. Well, what are your thoughts?
So yeah, I actually missed this fight, but I caught some of the highlights. So I can't really speak on the fight too much, but I can speak on the information I do have. And Hooker, what an animal! How can you can fight past that pain and that that's crazy. But I think you're right, Jiho. I think it is a good test for him against Jalen. I think it was a perfect test. Actually, I think that was probably the best match that they could make at this time.
Right.
We may see kind of the emergence of a new Dan Hooker. I think he's trying to put on that face too. He's saying, I'm back and I'm going to, after that loss to Arnold Allen, especially, I mean, that was a pretty brutal knockout.
That was tough.
But I think that speaks more now seeing Dan Hooker beat Jalen Turner. I think that speaks more to the skill level of Arnold Allen. And I think Arnold Allen versus Max Holloway also proved the strength of Arnold Allen. I think, most people probably just expected him to roll through Max, but or maybe the other way around. I don't know. I don't know what people expected of that fight, but I think it shows how tough Dan Hooker is fighting a guy like Jalen Turner. I think Jalen Turner is on a 2-fight losing streak now, if I'm not wrong, right?
He is.
He did lose last fight.
Yeah. But it's not not to take away from him or anything.
No, not at all.
Yeah,
he's tough, but he's had a bad run fighting some of the toughest guys. That's just kind of the way it is sometimes.
I feel like Dan Hooker is a great gatekeeper. And the reason I say that is because I kind of predicted that this would become a slugfest because neither of these guys are going to take the other guy down on the ground. And like Dan Hooker was able to kind of thwart like Puelles. So he didn't bring any damage or any kind of danger of his striking or anything like that. So I just saw this fight going as like striker versus striker because we saw like Jalen Turner, he doesn't like that game. Like his fight against Gamrot, a lot of people think Turner probably should have won. It wasn't like the best fight of the year or anything like that. Like Turner's not going to be somebody who's going to threaten to take you down and to win on the ground and all of that. And this was always going to be a striker's battle, but you know how it is. It's like, okay, well, if that's all you're doing is being a striker, you're not going to be champion. You're just not going to be champion at this weight class. But it doesn't mean you're not going to be like a top 5, top 10 guy for a very long time. So like,
Right.
even though it was an awesome fight, I don't think it necessarily propels Dan into any kind of conversations in the top 3 or anything like that. Like, it's not. I don't see it as like it's a new Dan or anything like that. It's just Dan's freaking awesome. He's not going to be a champion, but he's freaking awesome.
But here's the problem with both guys, right? The way you sort of like build them up is you have to give them time. They're obviously going to be exploited whenever they're going against a wrestling-based athlete. For example, a Michael Chandler, a Mateus Gamrot, right? There's a reason why they lost to both of those individuals. And it's just that they don't have that sort of sense of control on the ground. Not saying that they don't have that sort of pedigree, maybe in the gym itself, but they need to like be like you had mentioned, Turnit. They need to be around the same sort of class, if you will, where they're used to striking, right, with the other opponent, and not have to be apprehensive when it comes to like a person's feint. Are they going to go for that takedown? Are they going to go for that shot? That isn't what their concern is. Yeah, and styles make fights.
Yep. Yeah. 100%.
All right, let's go into DDP versus Whitaker. Wow.
Jeez. I actually like
Wow.
my mouth was open and like I was floored. I was just in shock the entire time.
Who wasn't? I mean, he
Yeah.
was able to fix his nose, right?
Yeah, I mean, the way that I sum up Dreykus is near constant pressure
Right.
and willing to sacrifice himself to be in your face.
Yes.
And that is good in middleweight, because if we think about like Izzy, like, do I see anybody outstriking Izzy ever? No. Do I see anybody like having better kickboxing than Izzy besides like maybe Alex Pereira when he's on his game? No. The people that we thought were going to go and give it and like bring it to Izzy, like you think about Vettori, he's a monster. Like we thought maybe he was going to be able to push the pace.
Right.
Whitaker, right? We saw Yoel Romero. That was disappointing as shit. I mean, people are like they get a few of those hits from Izzy and they're like, I don't want more of that. I don't think Dreykus is going to have that reaction. So I do think he can push the pace, but Izzy's kind of seen that at this point a little bit. Like, I know he hasn't fought a lot of guys that have brought him down. Like the Gastelum fight comes to mind to some degree.
Gastelum is the perfect like counter to what you just talked about, right?
Yeah. And like the Jan fight, to me, like Jan is a really phenomenal striker, but he brought down Izzy, right? So I mean, Dreykus, holy cow. Do I think he can beat Izzy? No. Do I think it's going to be a good fight? Actually, yeah, I do. I think it's going to have drama to it. Like, I think Dreykus will be able to take down Izzy at least once, but at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to matter too much.
But here's the thing about Roll. Please interject. I'm just throwing out my thoughts, right? So Izzy has this thing where he has this aura about him where people are just mystified. They didn't know how to take that in. I mean, Yoel is a perfect example of that. We also have Jared Cannonier as of late.
Yeah,
they just didn't know how to actually get into the rhythm against Izzy. Now, Dreykus, with all that he's like, I mean, he does have some kickboxing like experience in the pro world, but is it comparable to Izzy? No, it isn't, right? I just don't know, like, if Dreykus can actually really just impose that sort of pressure on him.
Yeah, like he'll keep it tight. He'll keep it tight, but if people are, because like you know what people are gonna say? They're gonna say like, oh well, Dreykus has power. Because that's a very like emotional response. Do you think Izzy has not seen power? Is Yoel not power? Is Jan
Jan
That's the most power.
Yeah. Is Jan not power? is like Pereira in his first win against Izzy, not like Izzy has seen power. So
Yeah.
that's
I
not
mean,
new to him.
I mean, he is a phenomenal force in the cage. Let's just make sure that he doesn't get on the mic too much, too often, especially when he's drunk off his ass.
Yeah, so I'm a big Izzy fan, but I'll be, and like I've said this many times. Like I'm a big fan of his and stuff, and like some of his cringe stuff, like Frozen like Elsa and all that.
Yeah.
Whatever. I think it's funny. I think it's just funny. But where I kind of stop with my fandom is like what he said when he came in and trying to use the N word and stuff.
Yeah.
I obviously he was drunk and he was
Right.
saying, he even said like 23 and me wrong and everything. And
36 and me.
then he corrected it to 26 and me. And it's like, I mean, I get it. I
Yeah,
don't
it's
think
rough.
Right.
I don't think it's sincere. I think he's just trying to hype the fight up and like like okay, Dreykus might be upset about what he said. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. But at the end of the day,
Right.
I feel like a lot of these guys are like in the back of their mind, they're like, this is freaking awesome because it's gonna
Right.
sell more pay-per-views.
It
So
is.
I think all of that was staged, honestly. Like not staged as in like they planned it out,
Oh, we
but
we know it was staged. Come on.
they all know what they're doing. They all know what they're doing. They're trying to
Right.
sell it.
Right.
They're trying to create a controversy. And then Dana pretends like he didn't know what they were talking about. But he
Right.
was right there.
Right.
He was right there, like hopping
That's
around
PR
behind them. And
101 right there.
yeah. So I mean, I'm not gonna like get into that too much because I don't think it's that important. It's all we've seen that kind of fake sort of stuff to promote fights, and it's gonna work, and it already kind of proliferated on social media.
Right.
But I see Izzy winning easily, but that doesn't take away from how amazing that fight was with
Hmm.
Whitaker. Like, holy shit.
He made Whitaker look bad. I mean, initially
He did.
may not have been because he had a feeling out process where he was missing a lot of his punches. But then, man, when he took him down, and even Bulldog choked him out, or Bulldog was it takedown? I guess he just like
Yeah.
it was a elementary school, in the schoolyard type of takedown that shouldn't work, but it does. It's kind of crazy.
Do you guys like, why do you guys think Dreykus had so much success with Whitaker? Do you think that Whitaker played down to the competition? Like he thought that it was going to be a lot easier of a fight than it really was ended up being?
Man, I don't. I would say it's kind of the same thing I was talking about with Holly earlier. I think it's a test of time. Is he really going to stand with the best nowadays? And I'm not saying DDP is the best. I think Dreykus is very powerful, but his skill level still, and it's going to haunt me to this day because I made a terrible take in one of the
Same,
earlier
same here.
podcasts saying that Dreykus looks like a female cardio kickboxer. He does
Did
have
you?
that boxy style where it's like it's very at least it was. I don't know if it still is. I actually missed this fight and I'm really upset about it. But I was on my way back to or I was on my way to my brother's house. I was leaving work and missed it.
Right.
But yeah, no, and that was one of the worst takes I've ever made because now I'm eating my words. He really shocked me though. I couldn't believe it when I called my brother on the way there and he told me he was winning and he was putting it on him and I'm like it's crazy. It doesn't compute. It
Right.
just you see a guy like Robert Whitaker who's like one of the most technical guys in that division.
Hmm.
He may not be the strongest guy, but yeah, maybe might have something to do with age, or maybe he did something different in his training regimen, or I don't know what it is, but he did not look the same when I rewatched some of these highlights. And um, I think in this fight specifically, it says more about Dreykus because
Right.
I mean I did not see that happening, and I think Dreykus. I mean, I don't think he's gonna do very well against Izzy, to be honest. I'm kind of on that same wavelength with you guys. I don't think that he's gonna stand much of a chance against Izzy, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Though I don't care for Izzy, and I never have. So I'm not. This has nothing to do with what he says or what I've never been a fan of his. I know he's a phenomenal fighter, but
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. That's fair.
I've just never been
Cringe.
a I've never been a big fan of his fighting style. Even I just think it's some of his fights he makes them safe, and not that I just want to
Hmm.
go in and watch brawlers and I do. I like watching brawlers, but that's not all I'm looking for. I just really don't like the way he carries himself. I don't like his fight style very much. I don't know what it is. I've just never had a thing for Izzy, but he's a phenomenal fighter at the end of the day. So I have nothing but respect for the guy as far as his ability to fight. I mean, he's super talented.
That's fair. That's fair. Like what I like even in his boring fights, you know, like the reason I like Izzy is because he says, "You're my bitch." Like I'm gonna be boring and you can't do shit about it, and I'm gonna beat you. Like
it's so annoying to me.
yeah, but like that to me is like supreme confidence. It's like I don't have to do anything. Like that's how bad you are compared to me. Like come to me.
That's fair.
Come to
that's
me.
fair.
Like you can't do it. But I mean, it does make for some boring pay-per-views, unfortunately.
I think that was the frustration though with John Jones. I think that's why a lot of people like that fought him. They just got. I mean, it's the irritation, like the getting irritated by not being able to put hands on him. I think that has to be so irritating. Like he can do whatever he wants to you, and you have no option because he can out wrestle you, he can outbox you, he can do anything he wants to you because of that natural ability and that natural talent. It just goes so far when it comes to MMA. I mean,
I went so far for that.
Yeah, and they're very similar. But I like Jones more because he also made his fights more exciting, in my opinion. And
true.
The difference between Izzy and Jones, in my opinion, I know I'm kind of going off track here, but Jones made it more interesting with his weird. He was weird stylistically. He did stuff that you would never see, and it was so odd. And you're like, what in the world is he doing? And it works. And that's the crazy part is like it's almost like he's invented these techniques, and he's just now showcasing him to the world. And it's like that's why I love watching Jones because you learn something. You learn like not just about his abilities, but you learn something about mixed martial arts in general. Just you've seen this technique that you've never seen in your life, and it works, and it's so effective. Like the
the
double kicks.
Yes, yeah,
that
and upward elbows. Like when were you seeing upward or against the cage, like upward elbows like that? It's just like it's so strange. I mean, they were working so well, and I don't know. I think that's what I like more about Jones than I like about Izzy, is what I'm trying to say. Though they are very similar in their ability to do whatever they want to you, and you can't fight back.
I'm happy you mentioned that. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Joe. Go ahead, Joe.
So I think that some of this conversation we should actually just shelve because we do want to talk about Volk. And
oh my God,
I mean, come on, he's now in that sort of like contention of, hey, is he one of, if not the best, like for UFC, right? But
that's something we've had right for a long time. I feel like
like
we've been
Paul, what were you gonna say?
Oh no, I was just gonna say like I'm happy that you brought up Jones because the Stipe Jones fight got formalized, I guess officially announced. So that's we're gonna spend a lot more time talking about that on a future podcast. But I'm just happy to see that like something is being done. Like I'm happy that Jones is fighting someone and Stipe no less.
Yeah. All right.
I think he owes it to Stipe at this point.
Yeah. Agree.
All right, you guys ready for Brandon Moreno versus Alexandra Pantoja, number 3?
Like you guys know I'm a big Brandon fan.
No kidding.
I love Brandon. He's a dog. I love his style. I don't see how anybody could dislike him. He's just such a nice dude. And I love his style. I like his flow, his body movement, like the number of reversals Brandon had. I know he's not the same as Pantoja on the ground, but he had a bunch of reversals against Pantoja, who's world class when it comes to ground game and BJJ, right? He had a bunch of reversals in that fight against Figueiredo. This guy is constantly learning and getting better. And
that is true.
And maybe he's not good in every single, like he's not the best in every facet, but that's fine. Like he doesn't care. Like he's willing to go and be ready, and just it shows the work that he put into it. There were a few times that I thought he was going to maybe finish the fight potentially. Like it was just a phenomenal. Like, I don't know. People are saying fight of the year potentially. Also, I know why Pantoja lost, so I'm going to take a step. Or excuse me, won. My bad. I know why he won.
Freudian slip.
It is a Freudian slip. It's a phantom slip. That's what I've been dreaming about. But all respect to him, the guy's an absolute monster. like the performance he put on was insane. So I'm going to take a step back and let you guys talk about it a little bit, but I just want to say I don't think it took anything away from Brandon Moreno and his legacy, and I hope to see many more fights of his. So,
Ro, do you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, I really like Moreno too. I think for the same reasons. I think you can't not like a guy that likes Legos. Like it's hard. It's hard not to. Like I've been at a point in my life where I didn't want to like him, and I still liked him. No, I'm just kidding. I always liked Brandon Moreno. I always thought he was a great guy, a phenomenal fighter. Specifically a phenomenal boxer. I mean, he's so good on the feet, and his jab is just incredible. I mean, he was tagging Pantoja, and that was his biggest weapon probably is his jab.
yep.
And he was picking him apart on the feet in some areas. Pantoja had more power, as we could tell. His strikes meant a little bit more, I think. I think he put a period on most of his strikes. And whereas Brandon was tagging him, but he was kind of in and out, in and out. Pantoja was all over him. He was attacking, shooting for takedowns and landing takedowns and taking the back. And I think that he just did a little bit more in that fight. I would have liked to see it be a little bit more back and forth to be able to say that it. And I don't really think anyone's claiming a Moreno robbery, but to be able to say it was a little bit closer, I would like to see a little bit more from Moreno in that fight. But yeah, Pantoja, Jiho and I have been talking about Pantoja for a good bit now. I mean, a good while. So, I've always been high on the guy. I thought he was phenomenal, especially when he beat Alex Perez. He had two great fights against Moreno, obviously. One in, what was it, Contender Series or Ultimate Fighter, one of the two.
Right.
And then the second in the Octagon. And it was very similar fashion, the way that he beat him. And I thought it was incredible. The fight itself was incredible. I've been waiting for them to fight again, and it came to fruition, and I'm so happy about it. It really did. It set the tone for the main event. It really did. It set the tone, and it was such a perfect night of fights, and that really put the cherry on top, in my opinion.
Right on. Yeah. I mean, come on, Pantoja, that's the guy. Even after he won, right? You got to know that he was driving Uber for until like a certain number of fights, right? To make ends meet for his family, which he had to leave behind in Brazil, which included his wife and his 4 kids. That on top of which, that guy has never had a fair shake at the UFC, right?
Oh, exactly.
I'm such a big fan of him because of his hard work ethic, but he's also a humble guy, right? And despite what life throws at him, he'll keep on moving forward. And that's what he kept on doing against any one of his fights, whether it's Royval, Perez, whether it's Moreno. And I feel right now Moreno is now put into a situation where he needs to win the next fight. Otherwise, he becomes now the Holloway to the vote. He becomes a Whitaker to Izzy. So I'm kind of wondering, where does this all put, Moreno? Because that guy is talented. In fact, I think he's more talented than Max Holloway. But and he has a better fight IQ, I believe. But with Pantoja, it's kind of sad. It's not sad in the sense where because he won the championship belt or whatever. It's, I don't know. He's kind of at 33, 34. And at the flyweight division, you can't age that much unless you're Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson. Right? And that guy is phenomenal. And in fact, I consider him to be the all-time GOAT. Yeah. Those are my thoughts.
One last thing from me, if you don't mind.
Please.
I feel like what sets Pantoja apart is he makes it dirty, and he makes it. And unlike Figgy, who Moreno was able to beat several times, I think what sets that fight apart from a guy like, or what sets Figgy apart from a guy like Pantoja specifically, is his ability to get in there and just make it disgusting. I mean, the fight, he has to make it a dog fight. It has to be dirty.
Right.
And I love that. Not dirty in the sense of he's doing anything wrong, but just in the sense that he gets in there and
there's blood on both sides. And like both guys have to put it all out there. And
and he does, I feel like.
I was a big Figgy fan before the Brandon Moreno series because the guy brought violence. Like he was nasty, man. Like he was nasty. But he kind of cowered when it got to the Moreno fights towards the end. Whereas Pantoja is like that second round, and he's coming back and he's bringing it and he's not stopping and he's like pushing himself. And to your point, like he's not going away. So
Yeah, yeah, it's a mentality thing. I think with Pantoja, I think he goes in there, puts it all on the line, and I love that. And it's hard to fight a guy like that. It's hard to fight a guy that feels as if he has nothing to lose because he hasn't gotten a fair shake.
Right.
And I think he's not gotten a title shot this entire time. It's kind of like a Dariush, I would say, but even to an extreme, I would say. I mean, it's even worse. I feel like he hasn't been treated the same because of the lack of stardom. He is I think Moreno is loved by his fans, and he has a very solid fan base. Pantoja kind of goes under the radar, and I think that's really what made him not appeal to like a giant audience like Moreno does. And I feel like that's kind of what led to them not getting the fight from the jump. Probably should have happened sooner, somewhere within the Figgy fights, but I don't know. Did we need 4 of those?
yeah, I don't know.
I think the last one was the best one.
Yeah, I think so.
But then 4 of them, really, I mean, we got to give other people some shots, All right, so let's go on to one of the greatest fights we had ever seen. Not fights, but how you say shutdowns. All right.
Yeah, I mean, it's more like I was telling my friends, Jiho, and sorry to finish your thoughts here because I kind of knew where you're going, but it's like with Volk, I never worry about how the fight's gonna go. Like he's just so much better than anyone else at featherweight, period. Like people say there's levels, but if you're on a level on your own, now we're getting into the GOAT conversation. And I've been pushing for this for a long time, and people gave me shit because they're like, Jose Aldo's the GOAT. And I'm like, yeah, but you think this guy's going to retire anytime soon, Alex? No, we saw him go up to Islam. That was a great fight, even though he lost. It only added to like his legacy, in my opinion. We saw him dismantle Yair. We saw him completely dismantle Max in their last fight. We saw him completely dismantle Korean Zombie in their last fight. The Ortega fight was something else. Like it wasn't a dismantling, but like that was a war. I feel like Alex is going to go down as the GOAT for featherweight. And I don't know when they're going to book the next, fight with Islam or whatnot. But I do think he needs to fight Ilya. I do think he needs to fight Movsar Evloev. And if he can beat those 2 fighters, there's no question. There's no question. Because those are both guys that are undefeated in the UFC. Both guys that are coming off huge wins in general. Like that maybe not Movsar as much as Ilya. And like you can make an argument that Emmett was not a huge test for him. But if they who else is Alex fighting? Like, I don't know. Like when the Ilya fight happened against Emmett, I was originally of the opinion that he needs one more before he fights Volk, but I think it's too soon for a Volk Islam rematch. I think it's too soon. I'd rather see him fight some of these contenders, knock them down, and then again be left with no one at the table, basically.
Wolf, your thoughts, or do you have to
go? Sure, yeah, I'll go. I think, and this is it's kind of hard to find words when I'm talking about Volk because he's so masterful in almost every way. I mean, the guy will find it. I feel like he's obsessed. He has an obsession with the sport. He has an obsession with becoming the best ever. And he's made it happen. It's in every way. He's a strategist in every sense of the word. He has a GSP mentality, I feel like, where he'll find your weakness and exploit that. And I feel like he's a master at that. He's a total professional. The guy's a class act too. I mean, he walks around and is the most humble guy you could ever imagine, but also has the confidence of a warrior. The guy, I can't speak highly enough. I love him. And I think he's in arguably what has become one of the most competitive divisions, aside from light and welterweight. I mean, featherweight is up there. And, especially with the newer fighters like Movsar and Ilya, like you had spoke about Josh Emmett and some of the other guys, Korean Zombie. it has become one of the most competitive weight classes, and he's making it look easy. And it really it speaks volumes to his level of commitment to the sport and his natural ability. I mean, like we talked about with Izzy and Jones, he has that natural ability to fight, and his fight IQ is second to none in my opinion. I think he's incredible.
That
So
killer instinct, dude. Like,
yeah, definitely killer instinct. He's a hunter.
Yair starts smiling, and Volk knows he heard him, and he takes him. And that sequence of him picking him up, smashing him on the ground, it
Oh,
was
dude,
just insane.
it was perfect. It was a master class. I mean, it was a master class. I'm like lost for words. I can't even hardly speak to how much I appreciate this
Volk!
guy. No, I seriously like.
I love Volk
If
too,
Volk
man.
started a cult tomorrow, I'd be a part of it. I am drinking the
I'm
Kool-Aid.
already in. I'm already in. I'll forward you the invite.
All right,
Nice.
sounds good. I appreciate
Jiho,
that.
I want your opinion.
I think
I'm
that
in.
Volk demonstrates an intellect that keeps growing, which is by and far like what you want from a champion, right? You don't want a champion to be to remain stagnant in their growth, not only in terms of muscular aptitude, but also their pedigree as as a true mixed martial artist, right? Now, do I think that he is the ultimate? Like, do I think of him as a featherweight goat? I do not. I think that he's a modern day goat because he stacked the numbers against Jose Aldo versus Volkanovski. Volkanovski has just murking it as of late, and he finally got he finally finished a fight more recently, right? Especially as one of his like title defenses. But he's had what maybe 3 or 4 title defenses, whereas Jose, since his WEC days, had 9, right? We had to take into account that WEC back in the day was prestigious when it came to the lighter weight classes. Back in the day, you had Donald Cerrone, you had Benson Henderson, you had Brian Bolt, you had Miguel Torres. You had a number of outstanding athletes back then. And so what I think about it right now with where Jose did get beat up by Volkanovski, if I'm not wrong. But I see that Jose was the one that was like the godfather of the featherweight division. So I have all the respect for Volkanovski. I mean, you have to give where credit's due. That guy is just murking it right now, and he's only improving. But I mean, when I think about leg kicks, I don't think about Edson Barboza. I think about Jose Aldo. When I think about somebody who's menacing, I think about Robbie Lawler. I think about Jose Aldo. So that to me is what like makes me like want to like admire a champion. Is the best
That's
way.
fair. That's fair. I think that's fair. Like I come from a background where I wasn't watching a lot of the UFC back then, right? So for me, I just don't have enough context around those fights, and I'd have to go and rewatch them a lot. It's just I think with a lot of these guys like Anderson Silva, like Jose Aldo, like they didn't retire at their prime like Khabib did, where enough of like there's enough losses towards the end, the twilight of their career, where it casts doubt on their ability. But I don't want to do that. But what I do want to like, for me at least, the reason Volk for me is the GOAT for featherweight. And again, not taking anything away from Jose or anything like that, because I'm admitting to my ignorance when it comes to like his reign and everything. It's just Max, you can see the levels between where Volk is and his competition. Like Yair beat Emmett in considerable fashion. Max decimated his like Max is amazing, right? But Volk absolutely decimated Max, who's just a phenomenal boxer. And to see that discrepancy to me just screams like this guy is just better than anything. And I think that's like emotionally where I come from. And then I think like the thing that takes away from Jose also is like Connor got in Jose's head for that fight and he beat him in one punch. I mean, I can't imagine a universe where somebody scares Volk. Never, never. Like no one's getting in that guy's head. Like he's just so confident. Now never say never, right? And I'm super biased, so I hope you guys forgive me for being so Volk heavy here, but That's where I'm coming
Yeah,
from.
no, I don't forgive you. You know, I just worship the man, but I don't forgive you.
Me too. Me too. I got a little statue here.
I mean, you think about the way that GSP was able to recuperate his loss, right? And
Yeah.
he's still considered to be an all-time great. I
Fair,
think
fair.
that a lot of these people, including Kamaru Usman, when he had lost that title, he felt a great amount of pressure along with Izzy, like falling, like
Mhm.
leaving his shoulders, along with Jan Blachowicz, right? They didn't feel like they had to keep up with that sort of pressure. And I think that's what got caught up. And I'm not saying trying to make any excuses for necessarily his loss in the way that he shouldn't have let that happen. But I think at the same time, it was you kind of felt more human and more connected with the person like Aldo to realize that hey, even the best can fall sometimes.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah.
I totally agree. Yeah, I think and not to take anything away from Aldo, because I obviously I have to give credit where it's due, because I the guy's great. The guy was phenomenal. One of the
Yeah.
best ever. Like you said, the godfather of the featherweight division. I think he set the tone for Alexander. I think he set the tone for Volk in the way that he approaches every fight differently.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people in the early days of the UFC, they just went in and fought. But what
Right.
sets Volk apart, like GSP, and I know I mentioned this before, is he treats every fight differently. He does a lot of homework, and that's what allows him to get these wins over huge opponents. And when he finds that weakness, he can exploit that, and he can pick him apart. Like with Islam,
Mhm.
he may not have beat Islam at his own game, but he did pretty
Right.
damn well. And we have to give credit where it's due with the Islam fight, because I mean the man has 26 wins and 2 losses, one of which is a loss at a division that's not even his own.
Right.
And
Well,
I
right.
respect that.
You can make that argument. I mean, that makes sense too. I mean, if you look at Fyodor, right? Emelianenko,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
that guy had how many losses in however many years, right? He was undefeated 9, 10 plus years, right?
Yeah.
However, when we think about Jose, like, sure, they were more calculated with their approaches. And that's what I find more of the, what's the best word to explain? More of the crutch of this generation is that they're more athletes than they truly are fighters, right? They study the game, but then they don't necessarily have the ferocity, right? That of like back in the day. You think about Matt Serra, you think about Ricardo Almeida, that school of Renzo Gracie. Those guys were like dogs. Tank Abbott, Don Fry. Think about the old school athletes,
Love that.
Sakuraba, chain smokers. But they were like, I'm still
Yeah.
gonna go in there and fight. That to me was more. That's what I got. That's what got me into fighting. Right.
Yeah.
That's what got me into competition and harness that sort of aggression. And so I think when even Dana White admits like most of these fighters, they're just athletes. They're not true fighters. And
Right.
so that's where I feel as though like I wish that we get to see more people as hungry as Volk and still have that animal instinct, right?
Right. Yeah. 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 Exactly. Like if I think about someone who embodies that mentality, Yuri is 100%,
Here he
110%
just
a
wants to
fighter.
eat people. He just wants to devour
He's
people.
a fighter first.
Love that.
Right.
Technique is helps him get there, but that you could tell that guy loves
Mhm.
to fucking fight.
Warrior
Yeah.
spirit. That's what it is. The warrior
Yeah.
spirit.
It
And
is.
like obviously there's other like I mean I would argue John Jones is like that too. Obviously he's methodical, but like he wants to go and hurt you.
John Jones is a fucking Viking, man.
Yeah,
He's
he
a
wants to
winner,
hurt
man.
you, right?
He
Glover
parties like
Teixeira is one of those guys, right?
right.
I think like to some degree I even consider Islam to be like that. Like
I
they're
don't
very
know.
they're very technical, but the thing is like I think their background and the way they're trained is like you don't want to like go overboard too much with emotion.
I
And
think
that yeah.
oh, sorry, do you mind if I interject right there?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, go.
I think you bring up a good point about Islam. Okay, so Islam, I think, is more of an athlete compared to Khabib, who is more the fighter.
Okay, that's
right?
fair. That's fair. I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
They have a similar approach though, where they're very careful.
yes, they are methodical, but then Khabib, he wants to end people like, for example, like when he was taking in those crazy kicks from Gaethje, right? When he was taking those heavy blows from standing up, he didn't show that, right? But then what
Yeah.
we saw with Islam versus Volk, both those guys were starting to tire out. You could see they wear it on their faces. And even when Connor was getting the better exchange with Habib, Habib did not show that. He was just stalwart. He just kept on moving forward.
I'm 100% with you, Jiho. Like,
Yeah.
I take back what I said. And the reason I say that is I could never see a situation like when Khabib pinned down Connor and was talking shit to him in the ring with broken English. Like, Islam would never do that.
Talk now.
Yeah, Islam would never. I don't think Islam would do that. He would be he's focused at the task at hand.
Right. That's a
Whereas
good
Khabib
point.
is like, I am going to kill you legally
Right.
if I can.
And what did he say right after the match? Say, why did he tap? Why did he tap? Right? He should have just gone to sleep. But
Yeah. I don't see Islam talking that kind of shit. Like, he's more stoic, which is fine. Like, that's smart if like you're a more methodical athlete, fighter type person. You're more like being technical and all that kind of stuff. I'm trying to think of, like, who else is a good embodiment of that right now?
I mean, as like a complete savage, I would say Pantoja.
Pantoja's savage. Yeah.
He uses what one of my friends, one of my brothers in the MMA community, a dog, right? So, by the way, I'm speaking to you, Roll. So, he's a dog. Whenever the cage doors close, he just gets after it. I mean, there's nothing else like. I mean, Leon Edwards, he's more polished as an athlete than he truly as a fighter. Same thing with Colby. I think Kamaru Usman, though, he is a true fighter. I mean, he walks around with broken knees.
Yeah.
And he still wants to finish fights.
I think a good mix is somebody like Gilbert Burns, half athlete, half fighter, but he has that fight. Yeah, that great balance. That's why I think I like him so much, is because you see the fighter in him when he has to face adversity, he's right there, and he'll be on you.
Yes.
But you guys are going to get mad
come
at me
in as an athlete.
I'm 100% in agreement with you, Roll. Sorry, I was just going to say, I want to throw a curveball here for you guys.
Oh, okay.
If we are defining like the real fighter attitude beyond just the athletic prowess and like, dude, this guy's naturally gifted and all of that, someone by this definition, if I distill all this shit down, guess I'm going to make an argument. Hamzat is a fucking fighter because of that Gilbert fight.
Mm-hmm.
I think he becomes unrefined as they come.
Yeah, it's kind of not great. Like, if you're his coach, you're just like, Jesus Christ, like, please don't do this.
What do you do? Right. What do you do?
Yeah.
The guy's unhinged, man.
Yeah. It's not good.
It's hard to get a lead on that guy. I mean, he's running wild out there, but that's what brings the appeal. I mean, it is kind of like that fighter again in the cage. It's not just the athlete.
Yep.
I mean, Hamzat's a fantastic athlete. Obviously, he's naturally gifted. He's got a great wrestling ability, but the guy can fight, and he will go in there and do his job.
Yeah. And
it's not a job to him. It's not a job to him. He wants to go in and fight.
Yes, 100%. That makes perfect. Yeah. And one example at featherweight of someone who I think is all athlete, doesn't have that dog in him, and maybe he'll prove us wrong. Movsar Evloev.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Arnold Allen. Those guys are like that.
Ilya fighter.
Ilya's a fighter, right?
I think Arnold's a little bit more of a fighter too. If you watch some of his fights, the one against Holloway, he was a little bit more methodical, but Dan Hooker, Sodiq Yusuff, some of his other fights, like some of his earlier fights especially, I think he goes in and kind of shows that fighter a little bit. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he's definitely a very gifted athlete, more so than a fighter, I would say.
Right. I mean, should we get into talking about Ilya? Ilya versus what's his name? Emmett?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so we're gonna jump around a bit, but then let's talk about Topuria versus Emmett for that 5-rounder, which was just a barn burner. I mean, Emmett can take punishment. You can never count him out. That guy's a living embodiment of Rocky. Whereas Topuria, we know him as formerly as a grappler, now a striker. I mean, he's really trying to complete the puzzle. Where do you guys see Topuria actually taking this? Where do you see him in the featherweight division? What do you guys think about the fight?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Turnit?
I respect Emmett a lot, but I've never really been super impressed by him. I mean, I think he's a great fighter. I think he has a great resume. I don't think he was ever going to be champion.
Mhm.
Again, not to take away from him. Like, unfortunately, there's only one champion, right?
Right.
And there's a lot of freaking awesome fighters. His fight against Qatar, like, didn't really Qatar, whatever.
Mhm.
Like, it didn't
Yeah.
really impress me all that much. Fight against Yair, right? I just like I didn't expect him to win. Now, he impressed me with the fact that he's just an absolute dog. He can take punishment. And he was giving it to Ilya towards the end, like every once in a while, but he was visibly slower.
Right.
He was a little bit more predictable in his style and everything. And
Right.
I I don't think he tested Ilya enough for us to be able to say that Ilya is gonna like be able to do anything with Alex, to be
That's
honest.
a good point.
Like Alex is not going to be Emmett where he's struggling to push the pace. Like
Okay.
Alex will bring it to you. And like I just don't think like I think Ilya is a phenomenal fighter. I think he's 1-2 somewhere around there for featherweight. I don't think he
Mhm.
stands a single chance against Alex.
Mhm.
It's just not going to happen.
Um,
But that being said, that fight needs to happen at some point. The
right.
fans deserve it. I think Alex needs that fight. There's a lot of hype around Ilya. Um, yeah, I mean, I think he showed just great boxing. But like, look,
Mhm.
like, do we think Ilya is a better boxer than Max Holloway? I don't.
Mhm.
And
No.
if that's the case, then what the hell is Ilya going to do to Alex after that masterclass that Alex had against Max the last fight?
Right.
Um, I just it's going to happen, but I already know like how it's going to end.
Roll your thoughts.
I agree. I don't think Ilya has much for Volk in particular.
Mhm.
I think he's going to be top 2, really. I mean, he'll be just below champ. That's somewhere in the top 2 or 3. He's going to be there. I mean, the guy's, I think he's very good. Very good. And he's super well rounded, as we saw against Bryce Mitchell. I mean, he beat Bryce at his own game. Now,
Yep.
however, we didn't learn a whole lot about Bryce Mitchell before, other than his flat earth theory and his, but no, all jokes aside, though, I think Bryce has good technique. He's a very good fighter. We saw him against Edson Barboza. Edson Barboza is clearly not in his prime, in my opinion.
Right.
I think that kind of it was a surprising victory for sure. I didn't expect him to beat him in such a dominant fashion, but Ilya has a different type of dog in him. I feel like
Uh-huh.
I just don't see him getting anywhere near the level of Volk or having much success against Volk. I feel like Volk
Right.
will be studying his game extensively, and I feel like he's going to be ready for anything that Ilya can throw at him. I just feel like there's not enough tools to.
Right.
There's really not enough tools to beat Volk in the first place. I mean, I don't think really many people can. I think it's going to
Yeah.
be a challenge for
I
anybody at
feel
that division.
I feel like this sort of like hour we could slice and dice into the perfect sort of montage before like we're all wrong about Volk. Right? One day when his chin does get shattered. But I agree with
Yeah,
you
it's
guys.
totally possible. It's totally
It's
possible.
Yeah.
possible.
But you're right. Ilya's striking isn't that great compared to like Max, right?
Mm.
It's solid, but is it going to be good enough for Max? Is it going to be good enough for Volk? Look at Volk's fighting IQ. The sequence that comes to mind about Volk and how good he is at interpreting information is like when he threw the inside leg kick against Yair, and then Yair was going to throw one of his crazy like highlight reel taekwondo kicks, and then Alex seeing this pulled him like in that millisecond and went for the takedown. While he caught onto that leg that not Ilya, but Yair had, and then pulled him. So that prevented Yair from actually launching the kick. He did this all in a split second.
Yep.
That's how smart Volk is. And people neglect to actually see like the little subtleties that he does to see like how he not how not instinctive, but how methodical he could get just like at the very last second. So
Yeah.
Ilya's sort of like temperament and the way that he took out Emmett. I mean, look, Emmett, not saying that he's a one-trick pony, but you're gonna expect to see lunging hooks, lots of hooks, right? What did Ilya do? He did a lot of counter boxing. But then when you're looking at Volk, the way he took out Yair, he was showing a masterclass of feints, stutter stepping, stand switching, right? He was doing all of that, which Ilya is starting to learn right now. And Ilya is still young. So there is there is time for him to grow.
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like Volk has the brain of a flyweight. That makes sense. You know how you watch these flyweight fights, and they'll be so competitive, and the guys are so fast. And I think to myself when I'm watching these fights, I'm like,
Yes.
my brain doesn't even think that fast. I don't know how these guys are doing this. And
Right.
it's so crazy because he's in the body of essentially a lightweight. I mean, he's a featherweight.
Right.
He's short in stature, but the guy is so strong and he has so much mental toughness, but his brain thinks so fast, and he can, like you
Yes.
said, he can process information so fast,
Yes.
It's like
and
twitch reflexes that have been
he catches on.
programmed
Yeah,
to
it's
respond
fast
to
twitch.
signals.
It's fast twitch muscles.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy,
Yeah.
yeah, he moves so quickly, and his brain and his body work symbiotically. They work so well together.
Yes. Yes. I mean, it's just like John Jones, right? John Jones demonstrated that sort of like that sort of like, I don't know what we call it, fiber optics sort of speed.
Yeah,
The way that he was able to take out Ryota Machida. Machida was a better kicker, right?
yeah,
And he always intercepted like John Jones when he was trying to launch a leg kick. Jones, knowing that, threw a leg kick, but then didn't throw it like completely, like he didn't commit to it, and threw a Superman punch, which actually got him to be, which kind of like stunned Ryota for enough for Jones to latch onto his neck and go for a guillotine. That
yeah.
was all creative, spontaneous. That was like spontaneous. It's
Or what he
amazing.
did against DC, where he spun him around. I mean,
Yes.
that video where he spun him, I couldn't believe that. I was like, this is so high level that like people
Right.
that are watching from a distance that don't understand the like how hard it is to actually think in real time while you're getting
Right.
punched in the face by a guy that's 200 pounds. Like,
And you're preaching to the choir because if you think about it, like Roll, you and I compete in jujitsu, right?
yeah,
Can you imagine for us actually thinking that quickly, that dynamically, to make our bodies actually react the way that they need to?
yeah,
It's incredibly difficult.
it's
Yeah.
so smart. It's just it speaks to how, again, back to the natural talent thing. I think when your brain works that well with your body, and
Right.
you just feel so in control of yourself, and
Mhm.
I feel like they just have, I don't know what it is. It's hard to explain, but it's this weird like I said, symbiosis that where
Yeah.
it's like your
Yes.
brain and your body are working so in tune, and you're on your own frequency, and you're able to
Yeah.
just take anyone out at will and think so quickly. It's so amazing. And you know who else had that was DJ.
DJ, he still has it.
He's telepathic. Yeah, I mean the guy, he knows what you're gonna do before you do it. And
The guy's
Yeah.
a living like X-Man as far as I'm concerned. Like
yeah, and like in
I mean,
jujitsu, like when it's like a black belt rolling with a white belt. Like the white belt's thinking about what he's doing at that time,
right,
but the black belt's like 5 moves ahead of where the white belt is, and
right.
that's
yes,
kind of how I look at
yes,
Jones
yes.
and DJ. It's
And
so
that's where the training comes in, right? Because like if I think
mhm.
about Volk, the way and I don't know about Jones and stuff, like it could just be freak, absolute amazing talent, right? Which it probably is. But we know Volk puts a shit ton of time into research and to like
Mhm.
watching tape, practicing. I wouldn't be surprised if what they practice is somewhat like, you know, the F1 drivers, you know, I don't know if you
Right.
guys follow F1, but they basically memorize a course off the course. So like
Yes.
they have the steering wheel and they're practicing at home and they're like, I need to turn this many seconds in and this and that.
Right.
And it's like twitch reflexes the entire fucking time.
It
And
is.
I feel like with Volk and his team, I wouldn't be surprised if they were like their training, their sparring is giving him looks that are send little tiny signals of like what Yair is about to do.
Right.
Like if he's gonna throw this kind of kick, if he's gonna like his
Mhm.
body, your body is basically betraying you because your setup in
Right.
2 seconds, he knows what you're doing.
But I feel
Right.
as though that he is like it's like jazz, right? It's like
Improv,
bebop
yeah.
jazz. You just gotta like improvise. You just gotta be like feng shui. You gotta be like Darwin, adapt to that kind of shit quick.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think you're right. It's like they do give him some looks, but they also give him like options as to, hey, what can you do from here?
Yes, yes.
Right.
And half of that's natural and half of that is like
Right.
just preparing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so crazy. Jones, like to compare it to music, like anybody can go in the cage and fight at a
Yes.
4-4. You know, like you can always fight. All these guys are fighting at a 4-4, but then Jones comes in and does some crazy shit where it's like he throws you off and you don't understand it. And he's the only one that can really speak that language. It's so
Right.
weird. It's like a really talented musician. It's like you think
Right.
about it and you're like, how does he do that? How does he have that in his brain to be able to work his body so well with what he's thinking? And that's how I look at it. The way he improvises, the way that Volk does too. It's the same. It's so crazy that these guys will just always make it to the top. If they were to fight their opponents, like let's put him up against any opponent, DC.
Right.
If he were to fight DC 100 times, he'd probably win 98 of them. And I'm not no disrespect to
That
DC.
is true. That
DC's
is
a
true.
fantastic guy, but Jones just naturally his body works well with his mind. And
Yeah,
I feel like
preach.
that's how a lot of these guys are. That like at the
Preach.
top.
All right. So, wow, I don't know about you guys, but I'm just enjoying this conversation,
Oh, yeah.
especially after a long,
That's
hellish
awesome.
week.
Yeah.
So we have a number of other fights to get to go over, but then I figure that let's do the popular ones, right? So we have Alexander Romanov we could talk about Brenner if you want, but I don't know if there's much to talk about that. But then Grant Dawson versus Damir Ismagulov, or Strickland versus what was it? Magomedov?
Yeah. I can like we can do a fire round, I think. On
Yeah,
these.
let's do
Like,
that.
if I can just touch on some of these, like I'll just go real quick through some of them. Brendan Allen proved to me that I'm an idiot for never being a big fan. So I'm going to fall on my sword and say that guy's a killer. I think it's only a matter of
Yes.
time until he gets a title shot. Do I think he can beat Izzy? No. Do I think he can put up some major problems for him? Absolutely. Like he's just surprising me at every turn. I don't know enough about him like you guys do. You guys saw this coming. I didn't. So I'll leave it at that. And then Macy Barber, I just wanted to say that like I'm pleasantly surprised with her performance against Hebos, who I thought looked really good her last fight in
Right.
general. So that was good, and I think that's good just in general to have Barber rising up. Another person to be talking about as a potential contender there.
Barber, definitely.
Romanov, yeah, and Alexander Romanov, I freaking love this guy. There's not many heavyweights that are that freaking dominant on the ground. I was very sad about his Volkov fight. That was a side of him that we haven't seen, that weakness. I think the Topuria fight, in my mind, he actually won that fight. And he kind of just coasted and it didn't work in his favor because of the judging. But I'm just happy to see him back in the win column. He was pushing the pace. He did a lot of striking. He did a lot of groundwork. I still think he has some more conditioning to do, but I still think he's like the most dangerous guy if he gets you on the ground in heavyweight, period. Maybe with the exception of John Jones, obviously, because he's now at heavyweight. But like he's dangerous. I just hope he keeps doing better. Who knows, right? But it's all going to be up to his conditioning and if he can get the right coaching.
Right.
Grant Dawson, that guy's going to be a top 5 lightweight, in my opinion. I think a lot of people are not very excited about that fight just because it was on the ground the whole time. But he did it against someone, Damir Ismagulov, who's freaking good. He's not known for being a ground fighter and like a grappler and stuff as much. He's more of a striker. But I think Grant Dawson, he put his name on the board, so he needs to be in that conversation now going forward as a potential rising contender. So that's exciting. And then we don't talk about cards a lot, but this episode, but I want to bring the cards in. I think a lot of what we talked about today, all the people that have done well and are promising, everyone that we've talked about has cards. And I think that is exciting, is a lot of these people are either in 22 product, 23 product, 21 product. That is good for the hobby. So that's all it's broad strokes. And one of those rookies out of 22 is Sean Strickland. And I think this guy could become more and more of a rising star. He's proven to shut down a lot of the grappling hype trains. I did not expect him to have such an easy time with Magomedov. I think Magomedov probably hasn't seen that level of talent before. So when he threw everything in the kitchen sink at him in the first round, and that didn't really like fluster Strickland, I think that was demoralizing to him. Strickland looked good. Do I think Strickland ever beats Izzy? No, I don't. Do I think Strickland's going to be a top 5 guy for a long time? Actually, yeah, I do. Like he's he's proven to me that his goofy ass style is actually not bad because he can back it up. He can back it up. He's a tough son of a bitch. And this is not a child-friendly stream, so I'm swearing a little bit more than I usually do. But I'll say this, like I don't think him going on the Joe Rogan Experience hurts him in any way. It's one of the, I think I saw a stat somewhere that it's one of the most shared streams recently from the Joe Rogan podcast. So Strickland he's controversial. A lot of things he says are not politically correct. They're not okay in general with like the public discourse right now. He's not polished, but he's also not apologetic about his background and the shit that he's gone through. He has the makings of a potential star, was what I'm trying to say. And love him or hate him, a lot of people don't like him, but I mean, he's there's no doubt, like he has no filter. So anyway,
Right on.
that's my take.
Roll, what are your thoughts?
I only really remember what we talked about with Strickland. No, with Strickland, I agree with you. Going on the Joe Rogan podcast was probably one of the best things that he's done. In a while, as far as for his stardom, like to boost his popularity. Yeah, that's huge, especially because he is so unfiltered. I mean, the guy says what he wants, does what he wants. He talks about it openly, like you said. I love that about him. I think that's great. I love somebody that's true to themselves, and he doesn't hold back for anybody, no matter where he's at. He's kind of like a I don't want to compare him to. All right, I'll say it. Fuck it. Joey Diaz, for example. Do you know Joey Diaz?
Joey Diaz.
He reminds me of Joey Coco Diaz, who was always on JRD. He has that, like, I don't care who I'm in front of, I'm going to be myself. They're totally different people. But yeah, I like that about him. And he talks about how I get my jeans and my t-shirt from Walmart. And, you know, like, that's the kind of guy he is, dude. I like that. I don't. He is who he is. He doesn't care much for the materialistic type stuff. He loves to talk about his politics. Cool with me. If you want to share that, you would like to share his backstory. I like that. I think he's just an honest and true guy, and it brings the purity back to the sport. It's kind of like how Jiho was talking earlier, the Don Fry characters who are unapologetically patriotic, who want to come in there and say whatever they want. I love that.
Right.
Roland, did you watch that podcast? Like, he comes off as a potential sociopath.
No, I never watched it, but I
watch it.
I think that that's what makes it interesting. Some of these guys that go in and do what they want, because it kind of goes against the norm, and I kind of like that about him. I think
he's certainly he's different.
He's interesting. Yeah, he's definitely an interesting guy, and I like what he puts into training. I think that's what I respect the most. Is he's not a guy that has to go in and win. He just like, he'll fight anybody. He doesn't have to win. He likes to 100% sparring.
That's all he does.
He'll go in and spar. And I think I respect that. If you go in, you want to do some light sparring, you have hard sparring days, I think that's cool, because that's pure training. And he's just
watch the podcast. I think you'll find it enjoyable. It was funny. It was weird. I thought it was really good insight into his head.
I think and one of the biggest things that I respect about the guy is he doesn't stress winning too much to where he's afraid to lose. He's one of those guys that he kind of, maybe this will make it more accepting to attain a loss. I mean, we look at it in the card market as, oh yeah, this guy lost. He's a piece of shit now, and a lot of people do, not us in particular, because I feel like we do have more respect for the sport.
I am bullish on his cards right now. I'm bullish.
Yeah, but I mean, he goes in and fights anybody, and I like that. He doesn't stress it too much to where if he loses a fight, he gives up. He'll come back and fight anybody, and I love that about him. I think it's cool.
Yeah. Jiho?
So, Bassist has brought up the point that Volkov is the most underrated heavyweight, which I have to agree with.
Yeah.
Before his loss to Derek Lewis. But let's see. So, go down the list. So,
didn't he lose against Topuria? I mean,
did he lose to? Did Volkov lose to Topuria? He might have. I forget.
So did your boy Romanoff, though.
Yeah, that's different. I watched both fights. They're different fights. They're different fights. No, he beat Topuria. I'm sorry. He beat Topuria, it looks like.
Okay. Yeah, Romanoff, I like the guy. He has some character. He just needs to work on his cardio. Brenner, I mean, to tell you the truth, that fight was just a bloodbath. What is that?
It's the Topuria out of 30. I just hit it.
Oh, nice.
Right on. Renat did what Renat does. He
Oh yeah.
likes to just pressure. He's like what I call the rice cooker. He just likes to pressure fight. Grant Dawson versus Damir Asmagulov. I mean, Damir, knowing that Damir was like the M1 champ, which was the same organization as Shavkat. I mean, he was just basically manifesting Bilal Muhammad's strategy of becoming the human backpack for the 155 division. Strickland, he did impress me. I just want to see him fight against someone who's more well-rounded and isn't afraid of throwing down. But then Strickland has always been in wars. Hebus versus Barber. Barber's stock went way the fuck up, along with Brendan Allen's, because, like you mentioned, Turnit, like we don't know if he's going to actually capture the belt, but he's a hell of a lot of fun to watch.
Yep.
All right, so let's talk about this week's card before we wrap it up. We have JDM finally fighting and cutting weight twice again. Versus Basil Hafez versus Holly Holm. I mean, not versus, but also the fight. Holly Holm versus Mayra Bueno Silva.
Huh? That'd be interesting, wouldn't it?
Right,
JDM versus Holly Holm.
That would be interesting. So, you guys have any takes on this week's fights?
Go ahead, Turnit.
This is gonna be one of my like famous non-technical, non-deep assessments.
All right.
Jack Della Maddalena. That's my analysis. Like easy win.
Right.
That's all I got.
Yeah,
like, he's just that good in my eyes that like unless I know exactly who he's fighting and the person that he's fighting is like some phenomenal, rising star or an existing champ or contender, I just think he's gonna have it.
Yeah, he's got some clean boxing, man. I like.
He's just that good. Yeah, he's good.
He's fun to watch too. That's the cool thing is he'll go in and strike. He's not afraid to. He doesn't want to make it clean. He likes to make it a dogfight, and I love that about him. I like JDM. I think he's and bassist. My brother's been big on him for a while. He saw this guy fight a while back. I don't remember how long ago it was, but yeah, he's been big on JDM for a while before he was in this rookie class. And he's fun to watch.
Well, we also got to bring up, I got to bring what is it, Basis to the show, because I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, Basis is gonna have to come on the show one of these days for sure.
Right.
With Holly Holm, I think Holly Holm is gonna take this one too. If you look at her record, she's only really lost to Amanda Nunes, and
right
in basically the past 5 years, and she's only lost to Nunes and Cyborg, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, and then she had that loss, obviously, to Ketlin Vieira, but I wouldn't call that a loss. I think that Ketlin Vieira, I don't know. I thought Holly won that fight personally, but it was close enough to where we can say she really hasn't lost a fight in the last 5 years, in my opinion.
She's active, like relatively.
Yeah,
speaking.
she's truly active. She's not going to retire until she's 46.
Well, that's awesome. I the more Holly I can see, I love Holly Holm, man.
It truly is amazing with her.
Yeah, she's great, and she stays fit, man.
She does, yeah.
She's not young anymore, but
No.
I mean, she's killing it. She's looking great.
It's a testament that most guys were just gonna bitch, but then like people like Holly Holm, they just show up. And like, I have nothing to complain about.
I love her personality too. I follow her on. She's one of the few. Actually, she's the only female fighter. I think I might. I follow Bullet too. I have Valentina, but Holly Holm's the only other female fighter that I follow on Instagram, and it's for a reason. I think she's like a very wholesome person.
Very wholesome. I was gonna say,
yeah,
she's very wholesome. She's constantly working.
Yeah,
she's just a nice person. Good ambassador for the sport.
Yeah, I would actually. That'd be one of the fighters that I would like to meet one of these days. I feel like she'd be cool. I'd like to get like an on card or something, like an in-person auto or something from her, because she's really cool. She seems like she'd be fun.
I just want to have drinks with her, but okay.
Yeah. Well, that too. I mean, believe me, don't get me wrong. I would love to.
All right, yeah. So I think that about wraps up our show, unless you guys want to talk about something else. Any closing thoughts?
It's good to see you guys again and appreciate all the support from everyone. It's just great to be talking UFC again. I know life happens, right? But this was fun. I think that there's some huge cards coming up the rest of the year. So I'm just looking
Yes.
forward to talking about that. And from a hobby perspective, we've got some thoughts about that as well. So this was kind of like a wrap up and catch up to some degree, but International Fight Week didn't disappoint, but there's way more coming up and relatively soon. So more to come.
Yeah. Stay tuned for that. And thank you for, taking some time out of the day to listen to us talk about UFC and the hobby in itself. Make sure you also, watch Turnit's takes. His debut episode was a few weeks back, but then it made some shockwaves. Good stuff all around. But thank you guys, and we'll see you guys soon. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Cheers. Peace.
Imagine that we're still rolling and Danny fell
Yeah,
asleep.
I got it. Don't worry. Give me 1 second.
Imagine in a
Check-
world.
Can you check it now?